everybody, it's Lon.TV, and 4K technology is making its way into consumer camcorders now, and this is one of the first ones out of the gate, the Sony FDR-AX33, and this is 4 times HD resolution, and it looks really nice, especially if you have it plugged into a 4K television, which is what you're going to need to get the full playback quality out of this. You'll also probably need a faster computer, too, to edit those files. I'm going to talk a lot about the impact of 4K and what it all means in a few minutes, but I want to first focus on the hardware. This is a really hefty camcorder, actually, for its size. It's maybe not heavy if you are using one that's maybe 10 or 15 years old, but a lot of the current camcorders out there are very lightweight, and they've been getting lighter. This one's a lot heavier, primarily because it has an optical stabilization gyro system in it to keep the shot steady even when you're zoomed in all the way, and it needs that because of its resolution. It's using more of the sensor than some of the current crop of camcorders do, so it needs to stabilize with its hardware, and that's what adds the weight to it. But it is nice and stable when you're using it, and you're going to pay the price with a little bit of weight to it. Like many camcorders, it's got the touch screen, so when you pull this out, you can, of course, navigate all the camera's features just by touching the screen. You can even do this lock-on focus thing that it can do, so it'll try to find a spot that you want it to stay focused on and follow that around. It works okay, but the autofocus system also has facial recognition, as many camcorders do. That does work better, especially if you're following kids or other human beings around with it. It works really nice. Beyond that, you've got a few basic controls on here, which is nice because they didn't overload it with buttons and features you don't need. It's very basic, which is how I like it, because I do a lot of my special effects and whatnot on the computer when I go to edit. So I like the fact that they don't load it up with too much complexity. So this is a weird button here. This one is probably the only gimmicky feature on it. If you push this button, it'll try its best to filter out the voice of the person recording the video. So you're still going to hear them, they just won't be as loud. And yeah, I guess it works. It's not really all that exciting to me as a feature. But beyond that, you've got just a playback button here, a night shot mode to put it into night vision mode. This is something that Sony's been putting on its camcorders, geez, for the last 17, 20 years or so. It works pretty much like all those other camcorders do. Not great, but if you're in total darkness, it'll certainly work okay for you there. You've got the power button here, so you can leave the screen open and then just switch it off with the button if you so choose. There is an HDMI connector on it, and they give you the cable too. Very short cable, but it works fine when plugged into a 4K television or a 1080p TV. But if you have the television on the wall like I do at work, I had to buy a longer cable to reach it, and you want to make sure that that cable is 4K compatible if you're going to go with that. Over here on the back, you've got a pull-out viewfinder, and this is handy because if you're out in the field and there's a lot of sunlight and you can't see the screen all that well, you can look through the viewfinder and see everything. It is not as high quality as some of the viewfinders I've seen on some of the professional grade camcorders, but it's certainly good enough to be able to see what you're looking at and make sure it's in focus while you're out in the field. So that works pretty nicely. Of course, you can't touch the screen in here, so you will have to focus either relying on the manual focus or using this focus ring, which I'll talk about in a second. The battery life is great. They give you a nice big battery here that's good, at least in my testing, for about anywhere from like an hour and a half to 2 hours of record time. It's a really decent battery, and it's nice to see that we're getting camcorders now that don't come with like a 20-minute battery and then make you buy another one. This one is actually a good battery that will last a good length of time. On this side, you've got the record button, of course. That's the big one. There's also a power cable option here, so you can plug it in to charge it. But on this side, they also have a USB adapter or plug built right into the handle here, and this is good for transferring data as well as charging, but it'll charge very slowly over this, so you definitely want to use the AC adapter when you are charging the device. But this is nice to have. It is very short, as you can see, but they have an extension cable in the box so you can get out to your computer if it's a little bit too tight of a squeeze, but it's nice that that's built in. The only issue is that if this cable ever breaks, you're not going to be able to plug it into the computer again, but you can, of course, just take the card out if you need to. It also supports external microphones, which is always a great thing, headphones, and over here is they call this like the multi-purpose adapter, and this is for plugging in things into older televisions like regular standard definition televisions. You have to buy another cable for that, or older HD TVs that don't have HDMI built in. It uses standard SD cards, but you're going to want to get the faster ones, and they recommend that you look at these cards, and it's hard to see maybe on camera. I'll do a little cutaway here. You want to make sure you get the little U3 icon on that card, because this camera, especially in 4K, needs at least 60 megabits per second of bandwidth, not megabytes, but megabits per second in order to get its image onto the cards. You're going to want to spend a little bit more on a nicer card for that. There's also a focus ring here, which can actually double as a couple of other things too. So you have the ability to assign a function to this focus ring here just by pushing down the manual button here. You have to hold it down for a second, and you can choose what you want it to do. So for example, I can turn it up to zoom, set that, and then I can use this to zoom the camera in and out. It's not an immediate reaction to when I move it in or out, but it's, it's good enough for getting a more fine control over the zoom if you really want to have more of an analog kind of control to zooming in and out. But you can also make it a standard focus ring also, so you can push down that again and change the option to focus or exposure or iris and control those features individually through that, which is very nice because a lot of times these controls tend to be little tiny things and really are hard to get at. On the top, you just have your standard wide angle and telephoto options. There is a photo button here for taking still images. It is a 20 megapixel camera for still images, but I never like to take pictures with these. I usually do, buy these to do video, but the option to do pictures is there. In some cases, you can grab still frames out of the video that you're shooting too, provided you're not too high up on the quality settings, and I'll show you all of that when we get into the camera functions in a minute. And on the top here, you've got a standard shoe adapter, which is really nice. So you can plug in third-party things in there that fit into this shoe. So maybe things like a video light or something like that can just slide right in here without having to buy additional adapters. So I was glad to see they put that on there. And then you've got the 5.1 channel surround sound microphone on the top. I want to quickly talk about the differences between Ultra HD 4K and the current generation of video hardware that most of us have at 1080p. So you can see here that this big orange area is the resolution of Ultra HD. By comparison, 1080p is only a fourth of that. You're also going to need to think about editing video on it too. And I have a 2012 MacBook Pro with an i7 processor. I've been using it for years now. I edit all of my videos on it at 1080, of course, and it's been working great for that. But this 4K video files out of here was the first time I said, you know what, I might need to think about upgrading this computer. I've got 16 gigs of RAM on here, and it is really bogging down even with that i7 processor. So I think what you're going to want to think about for editing is getting a computer with an i5 processor at a minimum, a new computer with an i5 at a minimum, and probably i7 processors to really get the most out of it. In fact, Adobe Premiere, their Element software, which is their entry-level editing software, recommends an i7 processor to get started. So there is some additional expenditures you might need to think about making in order to really get the most out of this camera. So let's take a look at what it can be configured to do. So right now I have it configured for this AVCHD at 4K video. It's supported now on Final Cut Pro natively, as well as many other video editing applications, but a lot of the lower end, especially older video editors that you might be using, probably won't support this format. This is a Sony format, by the way, so other manufacturers use different formats for 4K, but most of these things are working their way into standard editing software. So I can do, I'm going to pull up a 2 up here, I can go in and change that. So I have some options to change the file format, and I can go into a higher resolution XAVCHD. Again, that is the Sony proprietary format for 1080 video. So you can, of course, record in 1080p with it also. You can also go into the more standard AVCHD, which is better supported across video editing applications, but gets less image quality. So my suggestion is if you're buying a 4K camera, shoot in 4K like I have it set up here. There's another option. This is kind of confusing because they move all these things into different spots. There's another option here to set the recording quality. I would say go for the 100 megabits because you want the best possible image quality. And again, you're shooting at 4 times the resolution of HD, so you want to have as much possible data as possible. So go for the 100 megabits over the 60. Frame rate on the camera in Ultra HD mode is 30p, but you can get 60 frames per second at the standard 1080 resolution if you are into shooting at that resolution. And then you can also go down to 720p and then get 120 frames per second. And here's an example of that high speed function running on the camera. So here are some image samples of the camera, and these were all shot pretty much zoomed in. This has got a 10x zoom on it, which isn't the highest zoom you'll see out there, but it's certainly adequate. And these are all 4K videos that have been downsampled. So you can see they're very stable despite the fact that I'm zoomed in all the way and holding the camera handheld. And it really does look nice. In 4K mode, of course, these images are even more spectacular. I've got links to all of them in the description below so you can check out the true 4K videos up on YouTube. So it really does, I think, look excellent in both its color clarity, its overall sharpness. The images look nice, and everything looks good no matter where you're zoomed in on things, and I was really impressed with that. If you're doing sports or something like that, you might want to switch it into the 1080 60 frames per second mode to get that action captured better, but 30p looks really nice at 4K, so I was really pleased with that. Low light is also pretty good, so this is around the house just kind of at night. So these are when some of the cheaper camcorders get really grainy and fuzzy. As you can see, it's not as good as the daylight shots were, but we're still seeing a lot of detail, a minimal amount of noise. These videos were processed for my video system to bring them down from 4K, so there is some artifacts you're seeing on there, and I'll put links to these videos on there too, so you can get a feel for what it looks like out of the camera. But it looks nice. I mean, I'm really impressed with the low light performance here, and it's certainly usable. Of course, you want to put light on things whenever possible when shooting video, but this was good. This is the night vision example also if you switch it into the night shot mode. So overall, image quality is superb, and we played this back on the 4K set at the office, and we were just all blown away by it. It was almost like looking out the window. Now I have my video editing software, Final Cut Pro, up here, and one of the nice things about shooting in 4K is that you can edit video in 1080 and then have a lot of range in which you can zoom in via software because you still have all of this resolution to play with. So for example, I've got this shot of the bee on the flower out there, and I can zoom in up to 200% and not lose any image quality. It's remarkable. Let's look how sharp everything looks. I can go full screen with this here, and you can get a feel for just how nice that image looks even when you're zoomed in at 200% at 1080. And that is because this camera is shooting at such a high resolution that you're able to zoom in on the image and still have something really workable. Now, the only issue I found with the camera is the sensitivity of the microphone up top here. So if I just hold the camera and then activate the microphone here, you can hear that it really transfers a lot of that sound from handling the camera onto the recording. It's also going to pick up the sound of that optical stabilizer too. So if you're in a very quiet room and you want to try to get some dialogue, you're going to hear a bit of whirring kind of under the surface. You might be able to filter that out in software, but you really want to use an external microphone or do a separate recording, then sync it up in software to avoid hearing those sounds on there. But overall, I have to say this is an excellent camcorder. The image quality is spectacular. The optical stabilizer works really well. It does add some weight to the camera, but it really does keep images very steady even when you're zoomed in. And I think there's an argument to be made about going to 4K now, especially if a $1,000 camcorder is within your budget. And the reason is that you're future-proofing yourself in the sense that you're able to record memories of your child growing up today and then be able to play them back in full resolution on a 4K television you might buy 2 or 3 years from now. And as a father of a toddler, a year is a very long time, so 3 or 4 years to be able to get image quality 4 times what you might be able to get out of a 1080p camcorder or your phone, I think is pretty great because it'll still play back on the current equipment that you have, but it will be ready for the stuff you buy down the road. The only bottleneck, of course, might be the computer. If you don't have like an i5 or i7 powered machine, you're going to be really chugging away here on editing. So that's the only downside, perhaps. There is a way to record in dual mode where it'll record like a 720p file at the same time it does the 4K shot. It doesn't really look all that great, so you're really going to have to think about whether or not you need to edit that video, and if you do, make sure your computer is ready for it because those files can get large, but we're all going to be where this camera is probably in the next 2 or 3 years. This is Lon Simon. Thanks for watching.